Hello everyone, welcome to Beginners Programming. This is Damien. Hey, it's weird to be on camera, but I'm going to do my best to get used to it. There's a few topics I want to talk through today. I'm kind of doing this off the cuff, but I'm hoping that I've orated enough that I have a little bit of practice in it. And so the topics that I wanted to go over are a little bit of background first. So I've been helping out around Learn Programming. I ran Beginners C++ and Beginners Java for 7 or 8 years now. I've been coding professionally for 8 years. And so after all this time, I've seen all the same questions about 1,000 times at this point. And the one thing I will say is when you hear the same question about 100 times, and a new person asks it, it's hard to approach that question without frustration. So I'm going to cover some of the most common questions so that you don't accidentally frustrate a programmer. The first one, and this is one that you might ask your friends and one that you may sort of just happen to say in conversation. Topic of the day, will I like programming? Now, it's a good question. And the best way that I can explain it is kind of like this, At my job, I have a pretty great job by all accounts, right? I got sent on a trip around the world to go meet my team in India. I spent 2 weeks out there, all expenses paid. I flew back. The office I'm in has unlimited food, or not unlimited food, but unlimited snacks, unlimited drinks, unlimited coffee, unlimited tea. We have food catered in probably once or twice a week. And while I can't discuss exactly how much I make, I will say that it's very common for programmers with similar seniority to me to be making well into the 6 figures. So that being said, you're going to make a lot more than your average person. There are downsides to programming though, right? If you want to make well into the 6 figures, you're going to have to live in one of the between top 5 and top 10 most expensive places to live in the country. Realistically, you've got Boston, New York, you've got Austin, Texas, anywhere in California. I mean, there's a few places. San Fran's the obvious one, but there's a few up-and-coming places through there. Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, and then there's a couple of other ones scattered throughout the country that are more up-and-coming and newer scenes. Colorado Springs, Boulder, Colorado, St. Louis. So there's a few places there that you can work. And outside of that, if you're doing tech work, you're probably being paid considerably less. Now, the upshot to you being paid considerably less in those other markets is that the cost of living is hopefully considerably less as well. I can say about living in the Boston area, I grew up in this area. So from the time I was a kid to now, rent prices have more or less doubled, and the rate of inflation hasn't kept up, not even close. So what was once, a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom for $600, like it was when I was growing up, is now probably about $1,700, $1,800. So other places in the country haven't had that craziness in their housing market, in their transportation costs. So just because you don't live in one of those cities, or maybe you don't want to live in one of those cities, you have roots around where you live, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to be a bad career path for you. but definitely do some research into the market around where you live. My former fiance was from Alabama, and she considered at one point moving back to Alabama and said, hey, look at jobs in the area and just for the fun of it and see, what it looks like. And I was looking for jobs around Tuscaloosa, and when I was looking at jobs around Tuscaloosa, I found that I would go from making roughly 6 figures to about 60,000 if I was lucky. Lucky enough to get one of those jobs. And that was with about 6 years experience. So it was about 2 years ago. So that's just one of the things to keep in mind. But what is programming actually like as a job? And will it be for you? So one of the things that I think a lot of people don't know about programming is it's a lot like solving word problems in math, right? You don't necessarily need to know a lot of math. You don't necessarily need to know anything about GPS, or you don't need to know about how the internet works in a lot of cases, though it doesn't hurt. And the same thing with math. It doesn't hurt to have it. And there will certainly be companies that want you to have it, but the vast majority of programming doesn't require you to know Calculus 3. So it is like solving a word problem, though. Somebody gives you this thing that you have to build, and you have to think to yourself, okay, given what I already have, how do I break this into really small pieces and then build every single one of them so they come together into this larger vision that someone had? For people who like building things from scratch, taking ideas from concept to completion, it's going to be a very fulfilling job for you. But if you're the type of person who has difficulties conceptualizing or breaking things into really small pieces, this might not be the right job for you. So, next topic. I feel like I don't know enough after coding for a certain amount of time. Now, this is a really, really common thing, and I see it a lot in Learn Programming, which is a subreddit. And when I see this, it's always people saying, I've been going to university for 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is. The amount of time doesn't matter. Or some people will say this when they get into the real world and they start coding. I've been programming for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is. And they'll say, I feel like I don't know enough. I feel like I don't belong here. I feel like the other coders are better than me. This is extremely common, right? This is so common, it has its own Wikipedia page. And it's not just software developers, but it's a common condition called imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome basically states that, when you're in a job that has a great deal of knowledge, and there are people in your field who are either better or more knowledgeable than you, or you look up to as sort of a mentor, it's natural to feel like you're not as good as them, or that you're not putting in the same amount of effort, or you're not doing the same things as them, whatever the case may be. But it's natural, and generally speaking, you're wrong. It's one of those things where you're doing fine, and you need time to learn, you need time to grow, you need time to experiment. The point of advice I give to all these people is code every day. Code every single day of your life, and eventually you'll learn how you code. and how you attack problems and how you overcome your limitations. And for every one of those limitations that you overcome, you know, it's another tool in your tool belt for later. Next one, and possibly my most hated one. Am I / I'm too old to learn how to code? This one drives me crazy. I hear this all the time. Somebody who, and I see it from people of all ages. If you go on to Learn Programming, the subreddit, you'll see people say, I'm 14 years old. Is it too late for me to get started programming? Kid, if you went out and you purchased a gun illegally and you shot somebody, they'd send you to juvie. It's not too old for you to do anything. Like, you can do anything with the rest of your life at that age. And the same is true for anybody, right? Now, if you say, I'm 85 and I want to learn how to code, you may face some age discrimination. You may not. It really depends on 3 or 4 things, right? How sharp are you? How much information can you keep in your head? You know, and what does a job look like to you? You know, if you're 85 and you're wanting to pick up coding, you know, are you envisioning going into an office every day? Are you envisioning working from home and maybe doing some contract work? Because, you know, if it's the latter, nobody even needs to know how old you are. So, you know, keep these things in mind and set your expectations. But as long as you're in good health, and in good health mentally, and you become a good coder, there's no shortage of jobs right now. I believe that I read a statistic recently saying there's about 150,000 programming jobs any given quarter in the United States that go unfilled. Now, if there were 150,000 more programmers, there would probably be a need for there to be even more programmers. It's just the direction that the economy's going. So, you know, don't say, oh, there's only 150,000 jobs. I mean, it's a growing sector, and it's grown year over year for a while. So, don't be shy about it, and don't, you know, don't worry about your age. You know, oh, I'm 34 and I have a degree in law. I'm 47 and I've been an architect, or I'm 26 and I'm an artist. None of these things matter. What matters is your drive to succeed in a new field, right? The same way, if I said today, I'm over 30 and I want to become an artist, is it too late for me? You know, maybe it's too late for me to be the next Van Gogh. Maybe it's too late for me to be a famous artist, but maybe I could make a living at it. I don't know. I'm actually horrible at art, so I really don't know. And it looks like I actually somehow duplicated that. So I guess I'll change this on the fly while we're here. This should be, why are you teaching C++/Java when there are newer languages? Right. So this is one that I've actually been approached with a couple of times in the past. And people say, everybody says that your first language should be Python. Everybody says that you should be teaching new frameworks and new languages. Why don't you have tutorials for React? Why don't you have tutorials for Angular? Why don't you have tutorials for Vue, or whatever the JS soup du jour is by the time you watch this? Because God knows it will probably change from the time when I recorded this. And the answer on why is because these languages are old. And that's the upside to them, right? The upside to C++. is that it's been around for 30 years. And if you understand how to write code in C++, you can get a job. You may not be writing C++ in your job. They may want you to pick up Java. They may want you to pick up another language. Or they may want you to downgrade to C. But when people see C++ on a job or on a resume, they look at it and go, okay, this guy has to understand some things. This is not an easy language, right? So C++ is great because it shows that you understand how to handle memory. You understand logic. You understand how to solve problems without a huge amount of libraries leveraging you. Now, granted, you can use something like Boost that's going to help you out, you know, but we're not talking about that right now. As for Java, in my region, I don't know about your region, so again, please check into this before you learn Java. Maybe there are no Java jobs anywhere within 150 miles of you and you can't afford to move for any reason, whatever the reason may be. In the event that describes you, don't learn Java. But for pretty much everywhere in the world, if you're in India, if you're in China, if you're in Japan, if you're in the United States, if you learn Java, there is a job that needs you to code in Java. There are so many places that use Java and use it every single day that it's nearly impossible to be without a job. Now, the other thing about Java is that it's so similar to other languages, right? You can go from Java to Kotlin in a matter of days, if Kotlin ever becomes big. You can go from Java to C# in a matter of hours. I mean, the library, like the languages, the basic bits and pieces of the language of Java and C# are so incredibly similar. Now, on the other hand, you know, there's differences there, but Java is still, as far as I know, either the second or third most popular programming language. Now, if it iterated quickly and did some of the things that JavaScript did, it would probably be the most popular, but here we are. So that brings up the question, well, why don't I teach JavaScript? And the answer is because it's really hard. Not the language. The language is not really hard. It's really hard because the tool chain and the integrated development environments and all the stuff that goes on surrounding JavaScript changes every day. If you start a JavaScript tutorial today that was written a year ago, and it's talking about Node and installing dependencies and things like that, if you go step by step through that tutorial exactly as the author wrote it, I'd say 50-50 on whether or not it works, right? Because so much changes in that ecosystem. So, you know, if I wanted to make a tutorial that I had to upkeep all the time and you know, have to hover and really lord over, sure, I could do it. I like playing around with React and Electron and things like that, but with the frequency at which it's changing, it's hard for me to pick a point and say to students, this is a good spot to try and get a job. Because the last time I made a series of videos about programming was give or take 7 years ago. 7 years ago, if you were to go watch those same videos, you'd come out the other side just about ready to start interviewing. If you were to watch a video about JavaScript 7 years ago and try to interview today, you would not pass it. So that's why I don't teach it, and that's why I teach C++ and Java. Eventually, there will be another programming language that comes along, right? There will be something new. And if it's Rust, I'll learn Rust. If it's Kotlin, I'll learn Kotlin. Whatever it is, I'll go to the winner that we pick. But for now, there's still way more than enough interest and way more demand than can be filled for C++ and Java. So with that said, I'm going to cut this video here and just say thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to join the Discord channel, and we'll go from there. Adios.